Welcome back to another North Carolina Tar Heels football recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at Heel Illustrated, no S in there, at Heel Illustrated. And of course, our Facebook page, which we're actually devoting a lot more time and effort to now. And you can follow us on Facebook, Tar Heel Illustrated. Deana's fingerprints are all over that, as well as Trey Scott is getting heavily involved in the Facebook page. We're going to make a lot of changes there in the next several months, so be on alert. Go ahead and follow us over there. I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of football recruiting, Miss Deana King, and we are here to discuss North Carolina's class of 2024. There were 5 commitments. There was a rush a couple of weeks ago where the class went from, 1 or 2 to 5, just like that. And where we do expect that probably most of this class will be filled up at some point this summer. I know that's the ambition of the coaching staff. We already ran a podcast about how the landscape for North Carolina's targeting has changed a little bit with the footprint changing, and some of the criteria of what they're really focusing on some kids has changed a little bit. Here, we're going to discuss each of the 5 that have committed, and kind of now that Deana's had a couple of weeks to let this soak in, she's going to give you a healthy snapshot of how she sees this group. So Deana, before getting into some of the names, here we are in March now. We're in mid-March, believe it or not, mid-March. Where do you think this class is? What do you like about it? And do you anticipate sort of a skyrocketing here in the next couple of months?
Well, 5 kids, 3 offensive guys, 2 on the defense, 2 from North Carolina, 2 from Georgia, and 1 from Florida. So, check marks on the footprint, check mark, being kind of basically even, not pro offense and pro defense. So, look, as of today, the 5 guys they've got, 1 4-star, the rest, the 4 3-stars, ranked number 17th, Clyde. And this is really, really early. So, Carolina fans can say, hey, right now, looks pretty good, top 20 Clyde, because we know how fans are. They love those rankings and everything. So, like you said, March is going to be a busy, the first part of March, and I think the end part of March is going to be pretty busy. In the start of April, the team is currently going through their spring practice. They'll start getting back into that groove around April, and there's going to be a lot of kids come and visit, and they're going to host some kids, and unofficially, and there may be some official visits. Some kids like to get those out of the way. Some big targets are close to making some decisions possibly in April, and it could be a position, one of the key positions that could cause a domino effect on some of these kids. So it's a busy time. I know Coach Brown would love to have everybody wrapped up before the season the high school season starts, but we know usually that's not the case. But they'll have the majority of their kids basically lined up of who they want.
We'll hit on the quarterback targets and really who they're zeroing in on in several minutes. I want to note that spring practice started March 5th. They practiced that Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. They're off this week as we're recording this for spring break. They pick back up next week. The spring game is April 15th, and I put quotations around it because I don't think there's going to be an actual spring game. It's going to be more of a spring football celebration type thing where there might be a limited scripted 11-on-11 scrimmage, but more like a practice that fans will be able to come see. They have not announced anything yet, but that's the trend in college football, going away from the spring games. And I can tell you, I spoke with somebody on the staff who is part of making a lot of these decisions, and they said that there's just not that a great value in the spring game anymore, that they would rather just have a practice. They get more out of it, especially with the numbers. There's a lot of guys sitting out. There's a lot of new guys. They don't want to overplay certain dudes because they got to fulfill a spring game. So they might do some different stuff to get more out of their 15th practice, because the spring game does count as your 15th workout. So they had a lot of kids in for that first practice, because that was the day after the Duke basketball game at home. And they had a ton of kids in that night for the Duke basketball game. And you've talked to a bunch of them. We run a lot of stories. The kids are talking about how amazing the environment is, and they get to see the Carolina spirit, so to speak. But you're right. Later on this month, there's going to be another practice. Kids are already tweeting about it, how they're going to show up. There's going to be a lot of kids there that weekend, and that'll be very interesting, especially if it's one where they let the media in for practice, because we got to see one practice already. Then we get to see all the kids standing around with the lanyards, so we know exactly who is there. I think that the 5 that they have in, I think there's a great chance they add significantly to it by the time that they have the spring game in mid-April, because of the kinds of kids that we're going after. And if you haven't heard our podcast we ran earlier this week, check that out. We kind of explain that there. I think those kinds of kids don't string on. They kind of know what they want. And they're going after some kids that want to go ahead and commit and get in the books. And then once they are able to fill a healthy bulk of the class, they can hold out for certain other kids, which is what I think they're going to do. And I think when you look at the 5 they've gotten so far, 4 might qualify as that. I think Davion Gauss is a 4-star kid who maybe they would have held out for, but he already went ahead and popped. So of the 5 that they have so far, is that your take, that these are really solid kids who check a lot of those boxes we talked about in that other podcast, that they think these are the kinds of kids that come in and they're more likely to stick around because they're there for a lot of reasons other than just football, but football obviously being a primary reason?
3 of those kids: Desmond Jackson from West Forsyth and Clemens, Khalil Conley out of Christ School in Arden, North Carolina in the mountains, and Evan Bennett, a linebacker from Georgia. Those 3, basically when North Carolina offered them and started recruiting them, they didn't have any kind of ranking or anything. They were basically, sometimes in the recruiting, a lot of kids don't get their profiles until the camp season. So those 3, I basically had to do some updating on their profiles. Even made a couple, but Desmond Jackson, I knew how much he wanted to be at North Carolina, because he was at almost every home game. And sometimes you can tell the interest in the kid as many times they show up at a game day and everything. Desmond hadn't even got an offer from North Carolina yet, but he was coming to every game, and he finally earned the offer. And it didn't take too long for him to decide he wanted to commit to North Carolina.
Yeah.
Bennett come up from Georgia a couple of times, and he committed. Khalil Conley got offered, I believe, in January, and I'll note all five of the commits were at that weekend of the Duke game, the big recruiting weekend. Yeah. Of course, Conley and Gauls committed a few days after that big recruiting weekend, but 5 of them, Andrew Rosinski from the offensive tackle from Georgia, he made it up too. So it was a nice gathering where they all kind of got to bond, with each other and everything. So, but yeah, the Gauls, big time running back from a very big program in Florida that has a lot of Power 5 kids every year, and his team's loaded. And he said that he was going to do some recruiting on his own team. I mean, his quarterback just committed to NC State, but There's a couple of wide receivers that are 5 stars that I believe one of them's committed to Ohio State and the other one hasn't decided, but they're 5-star wide receivers, and he said he was going to try to recruit them to Chapel Hill. But it's I've seen what we talked about in the other podcast about kids wanting to be at Carolina, and those kids,
Yeah.
there's a reason they came up there, and talking to a lot of kids, it just something about Carolina and Chapel Hill interests them, and they come up and they like what they see, and they jump on it because spots on a roster are very limited, and if that's where they want to go, they drop them on the bus right then.
And they're even more limited now because every school's holding out for some portal spots, which are
Yeah.
taking up some of the roster spots. Okay, let's hit on quarterback and wide receiver. We're going to start with quarterback. We're not going to hold it to the end like some people might. We're going to hit on quarterback because ultimately, as much as Davion Galloway wants to recruit for the class, getting the quarterback is what they could build the rest of the class around. You've done amazing work on zeroing in on the kids that they really, really wanted. I know that there was a lot of talk about Jaden Davis, and some people say, well, Jaden doesn't really want North Carolina. And some people say, well, North Carolina would do anything to take Jaden Davis. Your take has always been a little bit different in that they're recruited him. There's been significant interest. He has certainly had interest in them, but he may not fit the suit the way of what they want their quarterbacks to wear moving forward. And maybe with Phil Longo, Longo likes the shorter, more fleet-footed type quarterbacks than maybe what they have now, what they want now. They have Drake in hand, but think about the kid from Georgia that they're going after right now, and some of the other ones that they're looking at. I think we're starting to look at that change a little bit right now. Obviously, with they know who they want, and I think you have a pretty good idea of how they've zeroed in on the player they want. They think they could build the class around. I'll let you go ahead and hit on that.
Yeah, it's Jake Merklinger out of Calvary Day in Savannah, Georgia. He was up that weekend, March 4th, and they rolled out the blue carpet for him. Literally, looked like he had a great time. Pictures with Mac, and Coach Lindsey. That was the first offer he basically gave out when he became the new offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at UNC. Of course, Jaden Davis had the offer and would still have the offer, but Lindsey went after him because he was more familiar with Merklinger, with him being at Central Florida. He was one of their targets there. And since then, he's really blown up. There's a lot of schools interested in him. The home state, Georgia Bulldogs, have offered. Tennessee's another school. Clemson has seen some interest in him. So it's going to be very interesting to see how in what he does. I mean, he's been on record of telling all the recruiting services that he would like to have a decision made, in April sometime. And he took his first big visit. He's not taking official visits. He's just taking unofficials unless there's something else happens and he needs to take officials. But North Carolina got the first turn, and like I said, he looked like he had a great time. And Carolina has pulled out all the stops. Sam Howell was in town.
Clyde Christensen.
Hearing from different players, it was so neat to meet Sam, and you got Drake there, two really record-breaking quarterbacks at UNC. Clyde Christensen you mentioned, all the could you imagine the tales that he could tell,
Well,
coaching?
let me jump in. Think about if you're Jake Merklinger and you're there that Saturday and later on that night's the Duke Carolina game, which is a big draw for a lot of these kids, even though it's basketball and they're football kids. But you're sitting in there and you've got Sam Howell, who right now is a starting quarterback in the NFL. You've got Drake May, who very well could be the front runner for the Heisman Trophy going into next season and the number one pick in the 24 draft. And then, there's this guy, Clyde Christensen, who's only coached up close and personal Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, and Tom Brady, most recently Tom Brady. Wow. And then, by the way, Mac Brown's a Hall of Famer. And by the way, you've known Chip Lindsey for a while and you had trust in him before he got to North Carolina. Now being at North Carolina only elevates that trust. That's a pretty good pitch. And I would think that North Carolina did about all it can in that sense to hit him with the wow factor. And the thing about Christensen, Howell's going to go back to Washington and do his thing. Christensen's there now. Now, the practice that I went to, the media was allowed in for the second spring practice. Christensen had a speaking engagement. He wasn't there. But because you could add a lot of analysts now, and eventually I think there's a belief that the analysts will be allowed to get on the field and do some coaching as well. The NCAA will pass that. You've got that dude down there working with you as well, not just in the film room, but down on the field. And I think that is huge. So they gave him a ton to think about, Deana, an awful lot to think about. And with an April time period, I think that positions Carolina pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, I think Carolina is going to get a really good, I mean, look at it. Their quarterback history for the past 4 years has been pretty good, with Howell and May. And now you add that. And then, Coach Lindsey has coached some NFL quarterbacks too. So he's got some skills with that as well. But
yeah, Baker Mayfield and who else? I'm trying to think of who else he coached. I'm drawing a blank right now. Yeah. We have it in many of our write-ups, but I'm drawing a blank on that right now. But yeah, he has as well, obviously.
But of course, like I've told you and said on the podcast a lot, he's a Georgia kid, and it's hard to get Georgia kids if Georgia Bulldogs want him, if Kirby wants him and everything. That Georgia already has a quarterback committed, and they're saying that they want to take two, and that may not, some guys, they want to be the one. North Carolina's probably going to take one quarterback, and they can say, hey, you're the one. You're the one. I mean, I can see Coach Brown say, hey, dude, look what we got. You can just step right in and be the next one,
Well, and Kirby has a history of losing quarterbacks too, because they bring in a bunch of kids. Really good ones transfer out.
They're probably going to lose some quarterbacks at Georgia. Does Merklinger want to be a member of a 2 quarterback class? Yeah. Another school that's really high on his list is Tennessee. And a lot of people think it might be a 3-team race, possibly Georgia, Carolina, and Tennessee. But you look at Tennessee, and they've got the big guy that had the big NIL 5-star. I think his first name's Nico. I can't pronounce his last name. I'm not even going to attempt it. So, you got to
Thank you for not trying.
you got to look at, these kids are smart. They see what's in front of them and everything. So I think North Carolina is in a great position for Merklinger. And like I said, he's wanting to get this process over in April. And like you said, North Carolina laid it all out for him. It's there. And, if he chooses to come to Chapel Hill, he's going to get some great instruction, with Christensen and be under a offensive coordinator. And it's Chip Lindsey and play for a Hall of Famer, Mac Brown.
And if they get him, then I think we might see some dominoes fall with wide receivers.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that we wanted to talk about. And there's some really good ones in this state. There's one, Alex Taylor, for example. I think that I think Carolina's in pretty good shape there, but there's some other schools that are too. I don't want to get totally into that. I'd rather you kind of dive into because your fingers on the pulse a little bit more. But even if they don't get him, there's still a lot more options out there that could really give them a strong wide receiver class. But I do think that domino falls after they get a quarterback, assuming it's Merklinger. If they have to then kind of restart a little bit in the quarterback realm and maybe take longer, they may get a wide receiver or two before they get a quarterback, but they would like to see Merklinger and then what, 2 or 3 receivers?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Alex Taylor from Grimsley. Clemson's awful strong for him as well.
Very strong.
And so it's going to be a battle to get him. His teammate there at Grimsley, Terrell Anderson, is a really good player too. Both of them were. I mean, Grimsley's loaded. I mean, we've followed Grimsley for the last few years. Travis Shaw being the 5-star defense tackle coming from there. And Grimsley has got a lot of talent, and they got a lot of young talent as well. Some more offers going out to some of those Grimsley kids, but Terrell Anderson and Alex Taylor, at the wide receiver. I mean, the quarterback there he'll be a young kid. I did an article on him, Faison Brandon. He's going to be one of the top kids in North Carolina. He's just a freshman, so look out for him coming this fall, putting up some big numbers, throwing to guys like that. But Anderson is a strong candidate. It's been at Carolina a lot. Jonathan Paylor, 4-star at Cummins High School. Lord, I've been talking about Jonathan Paylor forever.
Didn't he spend a lot of time with Merklinger as well on that visit here?
They had. He actually had on a letter jacket, North Carolina letter jacket, and they had pictures made. And he's always showed North Carolina a lot of love because they were one of the first schools to offer him, and it's in-state. And Burlington's just a hop, skip, and a jump to Chapel Hill. So, his family would love to. You're laughing at me in my.
I haven't heard hop, skip, and a jump in a long time, but goodness knows you'd be the one I'd hear it from.
But his family and friends could come right down the road to see him play. And he mentioned, he's one that mentioned academics. One of the best parts was meeting the advisors and stuff. But more wide receivers, Jordan Shipp, who plays for that loaded Providence Day team in Charlotte. And you notice all these are in-state guys. They're in great shape with all these in-state guys. Jordan Shipp, Channing Goodwin.
And they can't take them all. So if Alex Taylor goes to Clemson, people shouldn't worry.
Yeah,
because they're going to get 2 or 3 that are very, very good that have potential. With there's receivers you never really know. That's a crapshoot. Receivers are a crapshoot. They really are.
Yeah, and Channing Goodwin also plays at Providence Day for Chad Greer. He's another one. Keenan Jackson at Cuthbertson. Now, he's a really, really good player. He's been at UNC all the time during game days and visits. He's almost like when Carolina has something, Keenan Jackson's there. And a very cool note about Keenan Jackson is, guess who his high school coach is now? Duke Howell, Sam Howell's dad. He's the new head football coach there. So there's a Carolina connection there. So Micah Gilbert, here we go back to Charlotte. He's a big target too. So there's that's just the in-state guys. I mean, they've offered some highly ranked kids out of the out of the footprint and stuff. But I think, Lonnie Galloway building all these relationships with all these receivers, and
Yeah.
they're, they're Charlotte. I don't know. I've not drove from Charlotte to Chapel Hill, but it's not that far. I mean, it's
2
in a
hours.
radius. It's in
2
a
hours.
little radius and everything. So they're in great shape with landing some really good wide receivers.
By the way, the importance of Lonnie Galloway on this staff cannot be overstated. To be perfectly honest with you, so you think 2 or 3? I'm kind of leaning 3 because they have a lot of older guys, and there's some young ones in the program too. But they're going to lose a lot of kids in the next couple of years. So I'm thinking 3, and they would love to bring them up. The high school kids, get the receivers in there, get them working and learning their offense and everything. I'm thinking 3, and I'm thinking they don't have to leave the state to get the 3 that they really want, and the 3 that would make for a really good receiver part of the class.
Yeah, I agree. Because, Coach Galloway, I remember when we sat down and talked to all the coaches when, their first press conference, Galloway was like, he wanted to run them in and out, have 10 to 12 guys. I don't even know if he's had that since he's been here.
They haven't come close, and they weren't even they were so far away from it the last 2 years. And this year I think they might be able to go 6, possibly 7, depends on how some of the young ones develop. But you bring in 3, and if one of them becomes really good, one of them and another one is good, I think most staffs will take that, because there is a percentage that you rarely will all 3 try to be really, really good players. And you never know who the 3 are. You really don't. Sometimes kids will come in and you think, well, that guy's going to be a star, and it never works out. And the dude that ends up being the most productive member of the class is the guy that was like 3rd in the pecking order when they signed or committed. And it turns out they're the best player in the group. So that's another element about wide receivers. They're a little bit harder to gauge sometimes in high school if you're watching high school games versus the 7. That's why there's a lot of value in 7-on-7, because you have high-end athlete versus high-end athlete.
I know in talking to Jonathan Paylor, it's been Carolina's recruiting pitch is, look who we just lost, Josh Downs. Yeah. You're a perfect fit in the slot, because Jonathan earlier in his freshman year he would run the ball too for Cummins, so he's used to playing in the backfield, so he's versatile. And
Downs, by the way, had a great combine. Downs had a great combine.
We never really saw.
And he's going to move up the draft board, so they can use him. They can push him a lot.
Yeah, we never really saw Josh get the run like out of the slot position, but Paylor can. Paylor's a little bit. Paylor's built. He looked when his freshman year. I thought he was a senior. He loves to be in the weight room, and he's a track guy, and he would be a huge pickup for North Carolina. But like you said, I think a lot of things would domino if they got the right guy at quarterback.
Yeah, they weren't very jet sweep heavy. They weren't jet sweep heavy under Longo anyway, but certainly not with Josh. Although he did line up in the backfield every once in a while. And that long touchdown he scored against Texas A&M in the Orange Bowl, he lined up out of the backfield. But a guy like Paylor, who's thicker and stronger, they used to run a lot of jet sweeps with Switzer because he could take a pounding. And he was a pretty thick kid, all things considered. And maybe you see the return of the jet sweep. I'm a big jet sweep fan, though. I think Pitt has used that really, really well over the years, and I really think that's a really neat part of an offense, and it drives defenses crazy.
Yeah, and it probably drives fans crazy too, because you see it coming and you just can't stop it sometimes.
Let's never forget the Larry Fedora jet sweep from their own 1 yard line again.
Let's not remember that.
When Switzer got hit and it was a safety. They had safeties in the first 3 games that season, and Larry joked, well, we'll lead the league and get the safeties. So I think they had 4 that season. Good gosh. Anyway, other than on your own 1 yard line, it's probably, it's okay to run jet sweeps every once in a while. Deana, great stuff. I'm really excited about what's going to happen the next 2 months. We're recording this on March what, 14th, 15th? Well, I can't even see
14th.
it. March 14th.
14th.
Well, I'm going blind. I can barely see the date on my laptop right now. We're recording this on March 14th. We'll run this probably a couple of days afterward. I don't think anything's going to change here the next couple of days. And I would say by the middle of May or by Memorial Day, we'll have a real good feel on where this class is going. I think there's going to be a lot of activity. And obviously, if they get Merklinger and they get him in long before then, the domino effect of that is going to be fascinating. And I think we'll determine where this class ends up in the rankings that people care so much about that the coaching staff doesn't even look at. So there's that. Anything else?
No, we've done a lot today, and just want to tell people that are watching it to go to our message board, our premium message boards. We try to add little tidbits and stuff every as soon as we get them. We have a great community there, a lot of knowledgeable fans, and we love to. I mean, that's one thing about THI. Me and Andrew and David on the basketball side, Jacob, Brandon, Kevin, John Gwaltney, and Trey. We all are interactive in the message boards. You got a question for us, we try our best to answer it, and we want that fan friendly environment that you feel like you can ask us stuff, and I enjoy it.
Well, there's a ton of information that are in premium articles or on the message boards that you can't access unless you become a member. It's just $8.33 a month. And guys, that's like a number whatever in a drive-through restaurant. It's probably less than that now.
Probably cheaper than,
Yeah, well, see, everything's going this way in prices, but we've stayed the same since I took over 8.5 years ago, almost 9 years ago. Same. It's my 9th year. Same price now as when I took over. So just $8.33 a month. Go ahead and give us a shot. See what you like, and make sure you peel a few layers, because there's a ton of information that is there that will never make it here into a podcast and will never make it any free content. She's Deana King. I'm Andrew Jones. We appreciate you stopping by.